Virginia has been lost, Sag.
Virginia's been lost. Wait, Virginia's in space? What? Virginia's red. Fuck. Wait, hold on, wait. Sorry, House or Senate? Or wait, no, are we talking... In what metric are we talking Virginia is red? Governor? What's our legislature look like? Okay, so it's like a slight majority Democrat. This is like semi-common in other states because like Maryland is another state where we have not just a majority Democrat in the House and Senate at the state level, but like a super majority, right? But somehow we still have a Republican governor, right? So like I don't feel like this is uncommon in states. It's just, I don't know, it's odd. I'd like to look more into why that is. Because to the best of my knowledge, basically like the way that governor, so like the current Maryland governor, Governor Hogan won, was just by being like a Republican with a very kind of middle of the road Republican platform, even though it seems like for the most part he ends up appealing like much further right on his policies. He just doesn't usually act on them because he's in a blue state. But like he was a super big Trump supporter and all that. Wait, really? God damn it. This is the new meta for Republicans because it works. Republican bases just really like culture war shit because they don't care about policy. They don't. They just want culture war bullshit.
Where's my country gone?
I mean, like, it works. It's the reason why they do it. Oh, the assault case in the classroom? Oh, what are you talking about? Virginian governor election poised to cripple trans rights in America. Wait, not just in Virginia, in America. Twisting the facts of a sexual assault case to bolster his anti-trans platform. Tuesday, Virginia residents will go to the polls to elect state legislator and decide who will be the next occupant of the governor's mansion. The race will be between Democrat Terry Olive? I don't know. A former governor of the state, and Republican Glenn Youngkin has been closer than expected, with a bitter cultural battle taking center stage in the campaign. While much of the attention has gone to the nationalized moral panic over critical race theory, which explores America's history of slavery and racial inequality, and which conservatives have defined as teaching any history that might make white people look bad, and which notably is not taught in Virginia schools, the race has also revolved around the bathroom access for trans students. God damn it, this again. It's not 2016 anymore. Fuck. Alright, so, well, it's a good thing we've researched into this before, because it looks like we're going to need to be ready for this whole moral panic again. What most people don't realize is that the race will likely decide the future of trans rights as a political issue in the United States for the foreseeable future. The Youngkin campaign has taken an incident in Loudoun County School that involved a student sexually assaulting a classmate in the girls' bathroom and twisted it into an effective campaign talking point. This, Youngkin and his supporters in right-wing media have trumpeted, is the mythical unicorn of the trans bathroom panic. The one case they thought that would finally help sway the public on the trans bathroom issue they've been unsuccessfully pushing since 2015. Okay, so I assume they're going to talk a little bit more about it in here, but one of the main things of note, the reason why the trans bathroom bill stopped being pushed is because it literally came out. There's no evidence of this happening on a wide scale. Like, I'm pretty sure that of the available evidence, they have to be able to like pin any of these kinds of instances on trans people. It just doesn't really happen, right? Like the people who, the times where we do observe this kind of behavior are statistical outliers. Trans people just don't engage in this kind of behavior, right? And they abandoned it because there were people who came out and admitted that they had made it up, that basically this was just like a moral panic that they fabricated to try and rally their base, right? So now it's like, oh, well, we have an example where it's like we can argue that this happened. So now they're just using like the single unrepresentative anecdotal example to try and foster, like stir support for this. Or at least that's what the impression is. But the facts of the case don't match up with what the trans stranger danger happening that they have painted it to be. The sexual assaulter didn't lie secretly and wait for his victim to unknowingly enter the cell next to him. Instead, the meetup was arranged beforehand. The attacker and the victim had had sex in the same bathroom before. This time, however, the girl said no, and the boy didn't stop. The crime is no less awful and should be outright condemned, but it was not the attack facilitated by a trans-friendly bathroom policy as conservatives claimed it was. In fact, the school had not yet implemented its trans bathroom inclusion policy when the assault took place. Oh my god. Let's be clear about what the argument is and like how people are gonna go back and forth and respond. So What conservatives cannot do is say that this happened as the result of a trans-affirming bathroom policy that was put in place. Conservatives cannot make that argument because it wasn't implemented here. What they can argue is that they can say, oh, well, we should ban this kind of policy preemptively to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. Now, again, that kind of argument is not good for the reasons that we just mentioned, but it's a different issue than just saying that, like, the policy itself did not cause it, which it was not the case, but, like, if they're smart, they won't make the argument. That's not to say that Loudoun County School Board hasn't made major missteps along the way. They denied that any student has been attacked in the girls' bathroom, and school administrators also let the attack transfer to another school in the district while awaiting trial. Ooh, that's not good. Where he assaulted a second girl in a classroom? Oh, fuck, that's not good. Yeah, the school fucked up. School fucked up big time. For that, the board should be rightly condemned, but the trans community, not for its fight for basic human rights, had nothing to do with the attack. Nonetheless, the Youngkin campaign has effectively fear-mongered over the case and managed to close a major gap in polling in the historically red state turned recently blue. The election had become an oddly important event for trans rights thanks to the distorted GOP messaging. God. If Youngkin wins on Tuesday, it'll be the first time a conservative candidate has been able to leverage trans panic into an election day win. Historically, anti-trans candidates for governor in close elections have struggled to gain traction. Perhaps most famously, North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, the chief architect for the state's infamous trans bathroom bill in 2016, lost re-election that year. Okay, so, like, that was a time where they recognized, okay, like, this isn't getting us the kind of returns that we want to, so we're going to abandon it. It was the highest profile GOP loss in the year of Donald Trump's presidential victory, when conservatives generally swept into power across the country. In 2020, an out-of-state group leaned hard into ominous TV ads in Kentucky about trans girls in girls' sports in the Kentucky governor's race, hoping to help GOP incumbent Matt Bevin against Democrat Andy Beshear. That effort also failed. Late in 2020 presidential election cycle, Trump's inner circle toyed with the idea of going full transphobia on the campaign trail as it became more and more apparent that he would likely lose to President Joe Biden. Despite instituting the most explicitly anti-transgender of any president since the nation's founding, Trump rarely commented publicly on the issue. His comments were limited to tweets. Yeah. All right, we already know those. The possibility of becoming monstered in political and campaign discourse is a constant risk for trans people, especially in the United States, and Youngkin's campaign of distortions is perhaps the most serious threat to date. Should Youngkin win, it would signal to conservatives that transphobia wins, and they will hammer Democrats over the airwaves for the entirety of next year's campaign cycle. And there's nothing to indicate that the Democrats would stand firm in their support of trans rights. After 2016 election cycle, political pundits and comedians blamed Hillary Clinton's loss on trans issues, despite it never coming up in the president's campaign discourse or in any of the debates. Fuck. All right, we're going to have to do a lot more research. I guess it's good.
Every time I see politicians culture war transphobia around bathrooms or sports, this is what I think of.
He poisoned our water supply, burned our crops, and delivered a plague unto our houses! He did? No! But are we just gonna wait around until he does?
It's good that we're doing a lot of the research, like a lot of the very targeted research that we're doing this year, because unfortunately these issues are not gonna go away, which sucks. Because all I want to do is just be the #1 ESO streamer. That's literally all I want to do. And then this bullshit happens. And such is life. In 2020, former Senator Claire McCaskill blamed a focus on transsexuals, among other issues, for Democrats failing to gain a solid majority in the Senate, despite trans issues not breaking through as a national issue in the campaign cycle. Message sent to trans people was loud and clear: you're expendable. McCaskill later said her message was misinterpreted and apologized for her remarks. Given how quickly Democrats capitulated on police reform and the fallout of defund the police attacks on conservatives, there's no reason to believe Democrats will suddenly grow a spine and just protect trans people. I'm not sure about that. I feel like there's, like, a bit to distinguish, like, concerns about trans people for the messaging of defund the police. Like, they still ended up pursuing a pretty comprehensive police reform platform or, like, policies. It's just that they abandoned the messaging. It would be a really substantive shift for the Democratic Party to move away from that, because they've pretty squarely fallen into advancing LGBT rights generally. But, you know, I guess it's possible. I just don't think that's a one-to-one analogy. That makes the Virginia election Tuesday all the more critical. If Youngkin loses by a wide margin, which looks increasingly unlikely according to recent polling, and now we know that he won, then Democrats are less likely to quickly abandon trans rights nationally, but a close result with McAuliffe winning could make Dems in purple states and districts nervous. Democrats may not wholly abandon trans people, but their support could soften. They could be more open to compromising on the Equality Act and leave trans people partially or completely out of the Equality Act, for instance. Ultimately, a Youngkin win would be a complete disaster for trans people, both in Virginia and nationally. It would signal open season on trans rights going into perhaps the most important midterm election in U.S. history. This is going to set a bad precedent. This is also very similar to a lot of, like, the precedent being set by a lot of the trans athletic bans that are being passed at different states right now. Like, I believe there were about 30 that were introduced in total over this past legislative session, and a third of them passed. Like, that's a lot for a single piece of legislation. I'm pretty sure like a decent amount of the, not as many, but a decent amount of the trans youth healthcare bans also pass as well. Yeah, so conservatives are going to use this as a wedge issue for a while now. Imagine winning an election literally lying about trans bathroom attacks and CRT in the classroom when neither actually happened. Yeah, well, to be clear, it seems like there was, and I'm not sure if the person in this instance was trans, but like the attack did happen. It's just they can't say that it was attributed to an inclusive policy, right? And the real issue here is the fact that like they are trying to make a policy based on unrepresentative data, right? If we want to be technical, it's like literally they're like, oh, this happened once, so therefore it must be a problem everywhere. When it's like, no, you literally had to wait. Like this was a problem that you brought up in 2016, and you had to wait 5 more years to be able to find a person to make the case for you to pass this kind of legislation, right? I'm sorry.
Research complete.
You need to wait that long to find like your one example justifying the bill might not actually be that representative.
But I mean, that's sort of like the conservative like strategy, which is make an outrageous claim, wait until you have like some kind of evidence to back it up. Because that's exactly what like people were doing with the whole lab leak theory, is like people were absolutely spamming the hell out of it. And then I think the CDC said that they were investigating it, and then they blew up as like, you see, even the CDC thinks this is real. It's like, well, no, they're fucking investigating everything. Also, you made that claim before this article came out, so like, how are you gonna claim that?
Yeah. Fuck. There's a very similar thing too with like a lot of discussion that happened on critical race theory. The pattern I noticed was that people said, oh yeah, they're teaching these crazy concepts in school, to which the response, the one that I made when I was more involved in the discourse, was like, no, that seems like a bit of a stretch. I imagine that almost nobody is actually making that argument, which I think is an accurate statement. But then they go searching for like the one-off random school that has like the teacher who's doing some kind of outrageous shit, and they're like, aha, look, see, we found an example of the thing I was talking about. That must justify everything that I was saying, right?
This is a true thing about history. We don't learn about everything, and sometimes like crazy shit comes out and we're like, wow, how did we not know about this? That does happen. But people take that and they spin it to be like, anytime I can see one thing that I don't like, that must mean it must be endemic to everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So they'll be like, hey, we saw this like one homework that this one teacher gave that said like label all your privileges. It's like, okay, well shit, CRT is saying that white people are bad, and they'll like say like this must be happening all across the country. It's like, well, okay, can you like definitively say that? Like, actually?
Yeah, no, like if you want people to be able to have some degree of discretion in terms of their, like in different aspects of their lives, then that means that there's going to be like some degree of risk, right? Like if you give people like the liberty to have some kinds of discretion in decision making, that means that there's necessarily going to be like some degree of risk that's going to be accompanied by that, right? But I mean, like this is something that exists in like all other aspects of our lives, and we're already fine with it, you know, like in terms of either giving people discretion or limiting discretion or limiting liberty when, you know, greater good can call for it. So like one example is that like driving itself is one of the probably riskier things that the average person engages with as far as activities in their life, right? I would love to see like statistics on like how much death it causes compared to like other average things that cause death in the US or in the world generally, but like it's gonna be pretty high up there as something which is inherently risky, right? But just because like there are some people who end up dying as a result of engaging with that does not mean that we don't still permit people to be able to do it, because we see like in the vast majority of the time when people engage with doing that, it's fine, right? If we want to be able to give some kind of discretion to the vast majority of people who are responsible and who do like actually engage in ways that we would expect responsible people in society to do, because there's some people who fuck up, we don't want to punish everybody else who's otherwise following the rules, right? We don't want to punish everyone else in society who's otherwise acting responsibly in the way that we would reasonably expect people to, just because like one or two people fuck up or there's one or two bad actors or whatever, right? What we do is we want to like punish the people who are the bad actors and then otherwise let everyone else who's doing as they're supposed to go about and do their own thing. Does that make sense? So just like, you know, we want to be able to give teachers discretion because most of the time we would expect that they're doing what they're supposed to. It doesn't make sense to like impose legislation which is going to ultimately have probably worse effects on teachers' abilities to be able to like talk about race and history just because there's like one or two like teachers who are like crazy, right? Like focus on punishing like the people who did the wrong thing and not passing overly broad legislation. And conversely with like the trans panic issues, right? Vast majority of trans people who use the bathroom they just take a piss. It's the weirdest fucking way to paint like a massive group of people, and you see this happen like all the time, right? Where you have like a minority who ends up being disproportionately demonized, you know, usually labeled as like sexually or degenerate or whatever. But just because that is largely not going to be true, there's always going to be like someone from every demographic who ends up fitting the stereotype, right? And so it doesn't make sense when there is like that one person or that small handful of people who fit that stereotype because they exist to suddenly start legislating against the entirety of the group who's otherwise engaging with society in the way that we would want them to.
System survey complete.
More important to IMO, nearly 78% of teachers said that they felt as though the current rhetoric around the issue was interfering with productive and necessary discussion regarding race in America. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I think that's really telling, right? Oh, recently, I talked about it on the one panel with Dr. Heen Dowd, right? How there was like the professor who, after one of those bills had passed, I believe it was in Texas, now suddenly they were in a position where they had to start presenting like, you know, every perspective on history, including those pro-Holocaust versions of history, like Nazi versions or writings of history, right? Because the way that the legislation was written was to make it so you couldn't like have a overall education that was disparate against certain groups on the basis of their skin or something like that, right? So yeah, it has clearly like very bad effects other than just talking about critical race theory, right? Of course they had effects on broader discussions of race in America.